Over the past few weeks, I've developed somewhat of a new gear-related addiction to guitar or effect pedals. These ones. The plasma pedal right here, and also this one called the light pedal. Both of them from a company called Gamechanger Audio.
Accurate beats.
Even though my samplers and groove boxes and some of the synthesizers and the DAW for that matter has a bunch of built-in or plug-in or onboard effects inside of them, I couldn't really resist to say yes when this guy from Gamechanger Audio reached out and just asked if I wanted to check these pedals out, give them a try and just see what I thought about them. So I gotta be honest and say that the marketing material on Gamechanger Audio's website seems to be aimed towards the exact opposite person of who I consider myself to be when it comes to musical taste and all that stuff. You know, don't judge a book by its cover, I guess. So I didn't, and I've had them in the studio for quite a while by now, and the more stuff I put through them, the more I enjoy them. And in this case, I just wanted to show them off for you guys and talk a little bit about what they are before you start seeing them popping up on the channel in different videos left and right. First off, the plasma pedal, the high voltage distortion unit, whatever that's supposed to mean. And somehow this one turns the audio that comes into it into electricity before turning it back into audio again. And that somehow applies this really heavily distorted, overdriven, fussy type of effect. I guess that's really suitable for like heavy metal electric guitars or death metal or whatever those things are called. And it's definitely not the way I've used it here in my studio myself. Instead, I'm running drum samples or drum loops or something like that into it, and I'm just applying a little bit of distortion or saturation, and I'm tweaking the low frequency and the high frequency knob, which kind of makes it sound a little bit distorted or overdriven, but still at a point where it's manageable in a mix. Let's take something like this into, or maybe a little bit more, before, after, and of course, depending on the settings on the pedal itself and the source material that you run through it, it's going to behave a little bit differently from time to time. But I think it's a really cool thing to have if you want to get some saturation or distortion on something without having to go super far. Just grab this one, plug everything in, and it just works. Honestly, I think I would have kind of a hard time replicating this exact sound using anything else but this specific pedal. Sure, using saturation and distortion for drums isn't anything new, and you can do that in hundreds or maybe even thousands of different plugins, and it would still work. But this is just nice and easy and a simple way to do it. Just run the signal into it and, you know, sure, it's just a distortion pedal. It's kind of a one-trick pony and it does one single thing, but it does that thing really, really well. And you're able to tweak everything live with the knobs and running whatever you want through it, and it makes a big difference to anything. I love using this one for drums right now, but I've also tried to run like a bass line through it, a chopped up sample, and synths. It works really well for synths too, if you want to brighten something up or make something a little bit dirty or saturated. But I seriously doubt that I'll ever run my electric guitar through this one to get that super distorted heavy metal type of effect. That's just not me and what I tend to like, you know? And the way I make music in here, the sound designing aspect is just a part of the beat making process, and to be able to just route anything through this one to give it some saturation is just a cool and a nice thing to have. And I'm not sure when I'm gonna start working on my next sample pack with one-shot drum hits and stuff like that, but whenever I do, I'm sure a lot of the sounds are gonna get some plasma pedal treatment done to them, because it just makes a big difference, and I think it makes a lot of sense for drums when you want them to be a little bit saturated or distorted or whatever. So yeah. Now this light pedal here, on the other hand, is something completely different. First of all, it's not a distortion, it's a reverb, but it's also not a one-trick pony in the same way as the plasma pedal is, at least to me. This is an optical spring reverb system, and first of all, it's a spring reverb and does all the spring reverby kinds of things that you might look for. So the spring makes noises whenever you bump it or hit it, so it's a spring reverb. But what's cool here is that they've added this optical kind of technology that reads the movement of the spring and adds modulation to the reverb. Super complicated to understand and even more difficult to explain, but also kind of magical to use. And the gate knob here is also something kind of special, and it does way more than you would expect from a normal gain knob. In this case, 12 o'clock. That's what you get. Turn it down or turn it up. Turn to the right in this case. The louder the signal gets, the more the reverb actually ducks in volume and creates somewhat of a sidechain effect in itself, but just on the reverb tail, if that makes sense. And just something small like that actually makes the craziest reverb setting in the world totally usable in a mix, because whenever the signal comes in, you don't get like stuck in this giant mess of a reverb. It's still kind of musical, which is really, really cool. And the light pedal also has a bunch of different modes you can choose from for different kinds of use cases. Let's go to trem, for instance, which basically makes it into a tremolo, but just on the reverb. And I really like this feedback setting over here, which kind of creates feedback in itself, but again, just on the reverb signal. When I use that setting on something like a drum loop, it creates overtones and sounds that becomes almost like a pad sound, like an instrument that's actually playing with the drums itself. And using the gate knob, I can get it to sidechain. At that point, I can almost hear myself using that as like the main part of a beat. It needs a bass line, but that's pretty much it. I don't know, it's just kind of crazy to me. All I'm running here is a single drum loop and a reverb pedal, and that's what I'm getting. Ever since I got my patch bay installed in my home studio, it's now easier than ever to route audio from something like the SP44 into a pedal and then into an MPC, for instance. It's just dead simple and a lot of fun, and a cool way to use hardware effects like these ones. I think it's really important to keep trying out new tools and new workflows and new ways of making music, new DAWs or new plugins or new hardware effects or whatever like that, to keep developing as a producer and to keep having fun, because that's what it's all about, right? I'm finding myself looking for all types of crazy and strange guitar and effect pedals all over the secondhand market now because of these two guys. Just for the fun of it. I want to get into using more hardware effects in the studio. That's just what it is. And I'm still definitely on the fence when it comes to getting into modular synths. I can't really see myself going that route. It seems way too expensive and a little bit too complicated, but getting a bunch of crazy effect pedals every now and then to just add to the studio seems kind of similar, small things and a lot of change, but you know, that's probably where I'm going. Unfortunately, I guess. And believe me, recording clean audio onto a sampler or your DAW or whatever, and then putting effects on it, is one thing, and probably the right thing to do most of the times. But using hardware effects like this, being able to just plug something into it and play it live and twist the knobs, has something special to it too. And I know, I've been making music for a long time, and this is not my first interaction with hardware effects, but I've never really spent this much time with guitar or effect pedals, and I just feel like I'm hooked to this entire thing, using pedals for anything. Well, yeah, my summer vacation is officially over. I'm back in the studio again, back to working on projects like this, beats, tutorials, sample packs, who knows. And I do have some really cool projects coming up really soon, so be on the lookout for that. As well as weekly live streams. I'm thinking Tuesday nights, my time, could work. But in this case, I just wanted to show these new additions and talk about my new addiction to effect pedals, because I think there's going to be more in the future, just because it's a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one too. Until then, ha det gott!
Accurate beats.